All right, welcome back to Chapter 16 of Price Analysis. We're going to continue talking about gestation and farrowing. So gestation, of course, is the amount of time that the female sow is pregnant before she has baby piglets. And the gestation period for a sow is about 114 days or 16 weeks. Of course, that's about 4 months. And sows are usually kept in a specialized barn for farrowing where the farmer can give special care to the sow and the new piglets. Sometimes the sow will need a little bit of help giving birth, so the farmer can be there and assist if needed. Now, historically, this has meant keeping sows while they're pregnant in individual stalls, but this practice has kind of become unpopular and led to a lot of movement and protesting and petitioning among animal rights activists to end the practice and allow the pregnant sows to live in group housing where they can mingle together. And this movement has actually gained some traction. There's several large producers who have promised to change their production practices. And there's been several examples of legislation. So in the European Union, individual stalls are not allowed after the 4th week of pregnancy. So in the Smithfield Farm videos, you might recall that they keep them in individual stalls until they're confirmed pregnant. That's usually after about 1 month, according to the Smithfield Foods video. Obviously, that's the same as 4th week of pregnancy. So they're kept in individual stalls until they're confirmed pregnant and then moved to group housing. And the practice of using individual stalls is also banned in Canada and in several U.S. states. Now, aside from this legislation, the industry is sort of voluntarily moving in that direction. You saw in the video how Smithfield Foods is one of the largest U.S. pork producers, and they have also committed to converting their company-owned farms to group housing for pregnant sows by this year. And the linked report there was written in 2014, said they were on track to meet this goal by 2017, and I believe that they have. And so company-owned farms are different than the farms that they contract with for production, but they also indicate in the report that they are putting pressure on contract growers to convert to group housing as well, and the report seemed to indicate that they were going to be threatening to not renew contracts with growers who don't do the conversion to group housing. But I think we'll have to wait for the next few years to see if that process happens or not. So the industry is moving because of a mix of public activism and legislation and just wanting to sort of keep with modern production processes towards housing sows in small groups rather than individual stalls. So you might be wondering, why were they using individual stalls in the first place? So if you've never been around hogs are pretty aggressive animals that will fight together and often injure one another. And it turns out if one of the animals get injured and perhaps has a little bit of a bloody wound, the other hogs will become very aggressive and just keep pestering and torturing the wounded hog, and a lot of times they'll end up killing that wounded hog. So that's not good for either the producer's bottom line, or obviously it's not humane to let an animal be just attacked by his fellow barn mates because he got an injury. So to prevent that, the industry came up with putting the sows in individual stalls, and then they can't fight with each other and hurt each other. But as you saw in the video, those stalls are quite cramped. So for a little bit more information about the practice of gestation and farrowing crates, Purdue University Extension has a nice little article about the reasons why and the pros and cons between the two systems. All right, so a little bit more information. Sows typically have 8 to 12 piglets per litter, and the piglets, as we saw in the production practices table, the piglets usually stay with their mother for 2 or 3 weeks before they're weaned at about 10 to 15 pounds. And the sows will usually have 2 litters per year, and they are usually going to be replaced after having 3 to 4 litters. So after 2 years, the farmers bring in new, younger sows, and they send the older sows off to market. So also in the video, you saw a little bit about hog feeding, and hogs are fed a ration of primarily corn and soybean meal. They're a little more restrictive in what kind of feed they can have compared to beef cattle. They're particularly sensitive to getting high quality protein, so it's a must that they have soybean meal. And they have to have the right kind of digestible amino acids, and specifically lysine is the one that's most likely to be deficient in a corn-soybean diet. So usually the rations of corn and soybean meal are supplemented with lysine and any other amino acid that the ration would be deficient in. Now, we've also talked about ethanol production and how, as a byproduct of the ethanol production, there are these things called distillers' dried grains. That's a pretty good livestock feed. The hog industry also utilizes distiller dried grains, but they usually keep it restricted to no more than 30% of the ration. It turns out that if you feed hogs more than about this much of the ration, then the carcass fat tends to be too soft. And if you're a bacon connoisseur, you'll know what this means, because sometimes you open up a package of bacon and it's really firm and the fat is really flaky. And other times you open up a package of bacon and it's kind of really soft and slimy and kind of hard to pull apart the pieces of bacon. That's soft carcass fat. And the first kind is really hard carcass fat. And hard carcass fat is more desirable, particularly in products like pork belly and bacon. All right, another good place to stop. I'll see you on the next video.